Start us off for season 2, Carter.
And welcome back to Kevin and Carter Explain Wrestling. Carter here.
I'm Kevin.
And gotcha, it's actually Deception Day, our podcast where we deceive, lie, and straight up gaslight you until you slowly go insane. I'm Carter.
How is that different from a normal episode?
Because we have better branding now.
But I didn't make the.
But actually,
I didn't make the season 2 logo yet. I was gonna revamp it.
Well,
Razzmatazz.
that's okay. Because this is actually Carter and Kevin Explain Football. But now that I planted the seed of doubt in your head, it will slowly eat away your soul like ants at a succulent picnic.
Yep.
Anyway, so we are here, back for season 2, to talk the draft. The most wonderful time of the year that I've fully been radicalized against because, my God, it has been too long since actual football stuff has happened.
That's right. The WWE draft happening Friday night on Friday Night SmackDown and once again on Monday Night Raw. Where who knows what superstars will go to what brand. It's a legitimate thing that's happening.
Do they actually?
They're having a draft this upcoming week. A little bit playing off of the NFL draft because there's hype around that. But also, the WrestleMania storylines are pretty much concluded. Everything's going to kind of wane down for like the WrestleMania Backlash, which is kind of like the first pay-per-view of the year / the last pay-per-view of the year, depending on what storyline is being told. But it's a transitional period for the WWE to mix things up, start new rivalries, start new championship attempts, and get hype.
Woo, woo, woo. Yes. But today we are talking about the NFL draft, and I don't know how you're feeling, but this season felt way too long. Like, draft season felt way too long this year. Once we get to the point where we're like, I was starting to get sus when we started talking ourselves into J.J. McCarthy being a top pick. But then when we're going around and being like, Michael Penix and Bo Nix, top 15 picks, I'm like, this is too long. We have to cut the draft. The draft has to move up 2 weeks. The NFL or the NBA has it perfect. Literally like 2.5 weeks after the season ends.
Yeah, I think it's a good, like, it's a nice break between, like, you're not going to get much football talk during this beginning of summer because people are going to be busy with vacations and shit, and then there's also spring, not spring training, the football equivalent of spring training. And then you still have like the Super Bowl / like wind down post Super Bowl, but I think that the draft should happen a little bit earlier, like right at the beginning of, like, I wouldn't be against having it like the weekend after the first day of the season or first day of the new season, which is in like March, like a month after the Super Bowl, just being like, it's like, all right, here's how we're gonna
I think it should be the end of March.
Yeah, here's how we're gonna open up for your 2024 football journey.
Right.
First day of the season, all the picks are being switched, and then we got like the draft, and all the new guys are coming in and shake things up.
Right, and I think a part of it is because this draft in particular is like, it is very top heavy, and a lot of like the things that have been put into place are kind of just locked in at this point. In terms of like, we've known who the number one pick is going to be since January.
Yeah.
Right. We kind of know the general flow and rhythm of the top 3 to 6-ish picks, and we kind of know who the top 15 best guys are. It feels like there's not a lot of like betting and like fluctuating on that specifically. It is a super duper top heavy draft. If you have a pick in like, if you're a team who needs stars and you're drafting in the top 10, you're golden. Yeah. And if you're a team that needs depth and you're within like pick 20, you're really, really good. And then it just gets into a very blurry mess of like, well, maybes and like guys with question marks, not blue chip guys.
I would say it depends on what the team is looking for. For example, pick number 25, Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, rookie extension, I believe, had a fantastic season. Like, had some ups and downs, but ended real hot and had great stats pretty much all season long. They're not looking for a quarterback guy like a bunch of the other teams are. So, depending on what position they're looking for, I feel like that last third of the first round, you can kind of get away with things if you're very comfortable with what you have.
Right.
If you're
it is a good draft for base hits, not home runs.
If you're looking for a quarterback or a wide receiver or a starter, like a very skilled position starter, and you're above pick, I would say probably 20, being generous, you might have a bad time. But if you're looking for enhancement talent, I feel like you can have a solid bit of just group/team enhancement through the second round.
Right. There are a couple teams that interest me on that front of they really should trade up, or they could trade back and still get exactly what they need.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very fascinating draft. It is very offensive heavy. It is very alarming to me that basically the best defensive guy is Latu Latu. I never know how to say it. But he is this physical freak defense. Yeah, he's a physical freak defensive end who probably would be a top 5 pick if it weren't for the little itty bitty thing that he actually had to retire from football for multiple years because he had a severe neck injury.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if that's your best, if that's what you're bringing to the table defense, I'm good. I don't want a defensive. I can live without defensive picks this year.
Funnily enough, he's ranked number 10 on the PFF draft board.
Well, that's the thing. I know the Bills are going to talk themselves into drafting him. I just know it, and
he makes it down that far. Bills aren't in exactly a primo position.
I straight up think he will, because to talk, and we've talked about the actual process of the draft before, but there's so many everyone's board is different. I think a lot of big board and mock draft stuff kind of imagines every team kind of being the same rational actor. When in reality, every team has a different approach to who they'll even put on their boards. Yeah. And also, we're dealing with a lot of irrational actors here. If every team had rational actors, there'd be a lot better teams in the NFL. But yeah, there'll be a lot of teams who just straight up don't have them on their board. They're we are not risking that. That is not worth, getting fired over.
And then there's the shyster of all shysters, Howie Roseman, who's I said this at work the other day. There is 2 separate NFL GM group chats. There's one with all 32 teams and all of them, where they discuss rules and other bogus shit. Mm-hmm. And then there's one with 31 teams, and the only one person that isn't included is Howie Roseman, and it's all of them trying to console each other from not making moves.
They're all just God, this fucking asshole.
Yeah. And they're hey, who got a call from Howie today? And then the Titans are you know what, I did. And they're no, don't. He's going to just take the market on you. But what if they, it's what if he's nice this time? What if he gives us something good? And it's what?
Howie in general is just a great example of, what I'm talking about in terms of, you really gotta try to get a star. And I'll talk about this with a lot of teams because we're going to go through every team and just list off least needed, most needed position. And more often than not, I'll just say you need a star. And basically every team, every good team, you either are good at finding them late, you're either good at developing them, or you're good at getting the draft capital to get up and go get one.
Yep.
You're good at going and getting one. And Howie Roseman has correctly identified that he's not necessarily the best at finding them late. So he has basically made sure that he will always have enough draft capital to get within the top 10 to 12 and get who he wants. Which is again, it's the problem with a lot of other teams where they're we'll get another single, we'll get another double, but they don't have the development ability to make that guy a star, or they don't have the eye of being yes, this one defensive end out of the glut of late round defensive ends, he's the guy. The Lions are a great example of being able to find them. So many great picks from them have, they're the guys who look at Amon-Ra St. Brown and they're yep, we can make this work.
What an ultimately slept on pick. Him, Puka Nacua, these are people that dropped like
yes,
a lot
the
further
Rams are
than they
very
should
good
have,
at it.
and then it's just like, God damn, dude, like that was talent.
It is underrated that the Rams haven't had a first-round pick in years, but the talent drain literally lasted for like a year before they found 2 more blue chip guys and basically stabilized everything.
Yeah. No, it's going to be... This is going to be like every other draft. I feel like the first 5 picks are almost predictable, and like you can almost name the exact names of who's going to get picked. But this extended period of time between the end of the season and the draft, I think that's what demoted CJ Stroud from being the number 1 overall to number 2. And just like
I do feel like it was just people talking themselves out of. You talk yourselves out of more things than you talk yourself into. I feel like.
Yeah, especially like you. It's been a minute since they've all played. Like, and you're not watching them like you can rewatch tapes and stuff, but that takes time. You're probably just like, oh man, what if I didn't consider this? Or like trying to think of your contingency plan, but it just doesn't go well.
Right. You want to know my favorite example of that, fictional example of that, is we were just talking about the movie Draft Day before we started talking. And I love that a huge plot point, the Browns are basically in position to draft a guy named Bo Callahan, who's supposed to be this elite quarterback prospect. But Kevin Costner gets really hung up on the fact that apparently no one went to his birthday. A totally like one person's account of what happened. And decides to draft a linebacker instead. And I'm like, that is so insane that, like, you know, the movie treats it as like, oh, he's a genius. When in reality, they're going 6-10 and his ass is getting fired for that. But, yeah, as we're just kind of broadly talking, we're mostly focusing on general team needs as opposed to individual players. But is there anyone in the process who's really stood out to you? Like, do we just want to talk about the presumptive first overall pick?
Ah, man, it's... I mean, let's be real here. Caleb Williams is going to be the first overall pick. I would say it's almost guaranteed. And unless if they talk themselves out of it.
Right.
I'm not 100... Like, I'm sold on him, but not sold on him. You know? Or, let me redact that statement. I'm sold on him as being a quality player, but I would not want him for my team. I feel like that makes sense.
Yeah, no, we have talked about that. Because he does kind of...
A lot of attitude.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, he has a lot of attitude. I remember back in January when everyone's talking about when he's declaring, he was pulling the whole, like... Because he is a college junior. He was pulling the whole... It's like, if I don't like one of the teams that could draft me, I'm just going to play another season. I'm not going to declare for it. And it's like, I get that's a strategy, but I feel like that's also not a public strategy, you know?
Yeah, for me, it's not even as much that, only because I think the whole draft process is alarmingly undemocratic and anti-worker, so I'm cool with people. If you have power to break the system... I still maintain Zion Williamson in the NBA should have just been like, I want to play for the Knicks. Because, like, the whole everyone was gearing for him to go to the Knicks, but then the pick ended up being the Pelicans. And I'm just like, I just think it would have been good to get rid of this stupid lottery process.
Yeah.
But, like, for me, I've been completely sold on him as a player. Like, you go back, people kept showing highlights of him and showing, like, full game sequences. And it is just so insane how bad that USC offense was. People were dropping 8, rushing 3, and still somehow getting to him. Like, still breaking through the line.
Yeah.
Like, you have to actively be trying not to block at that point. And truly, like, especially for this version of the NFL, where this year the big analytics thing is pressure rate. Like, what you do under pressure, how many times does it turn into a sack, how many times does it turn into a completion? His numbers are off the freaking charts. I mean... people, again, compared to Patrick Mahomes in terms of the razzmatazz, but I really think he's more like, what if Drew Brees was a little bulkier and a little faster, like could actually run a little bit? Like, he just seems to have a supernatural ability to know where to get the ball. For me, my problem is, like, more just, there's this whole thing about him that basically he's been groomed to be the guy since he was, like, 10. his dad has been very hands-on with getting him like sports psychiatrist, like doing all of these like training things, like having like him basically do the kind of interviews you would do with like the CIA. And anytime there's like this generational prospect who has basically been like, I'm going to be the star from day one, I always worry like, well, what happens when you actually get there? Is it going to be enough for you?
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm rambling here, but there's an anecdotal story that I really, really like from an actor. He was talking about he ended up his big break was getting to be on the John Mulaney show, which only lasted for like a season. But he's sitting down talking to Lorne Michaels, the SNL sort of mastermind, for lack of a better word. And he's talking about like, things haven't been going great in my career. I've kind of been grinding. I've kind of been losing faith. But I think, this is exactly what I've wanted. This has been everything I've dreamed of. And Lorne just looks him dead in the eyes and goes, but you'll get sad eventually. And I always worry with like generational prospects like this. It's like, once you get the thing and you're not happy, then what happens?
You get like, sad eventually, apparently.
Exactly. It's like, what happens if there's still a hole there? Like, how do you mentally work through that? The best example of that turning out to be like still working out is Victor Wembanyama, who just got drafted this year for the Spurs, where I thought the same thing, because he was equally like, he's like, I learned how to speak English like an American because I knew I'd need to do that. Yeah. And no, it turns out that guy is a competitive lunatic. Like, he was furious they weren't as good as he was. Like, he was in the skills challenge during the All-Star game, and he's actively getting mad at a guy for shooting with his offhand, because he's like, come on, man, I wanted to win this. And I'm like, no, he'll be okay, because that guy's got a fire in his butt. Yeah. Whereas, like, I just want to see that with Caleb. Like, he's been through adversity. That last season at USC sucked. I just need to know, like, hey, man, when you become the guy, when you're the first overall pick, like, that fire's still going to be there, right?
Yeah.
It's nothing on the field that worries me, to be honest.
Yeah, because there's, outside of your skills, there's also the attitude. And some people have this, like, humbleness, like we learned with C.J. Stroud from last season, and another person who we're definitely going to be following him still through this season. But it's like, he proved very quickly that he was, like, for lack of a better word, of sound mind. And
yeah,
being a very early pick that a team will be relying on, you need to have that. Because I think the worst thing as a rookie in any professional sport, not just the NFL, is you go in too cocky. Because if you really want to think about it, that could go only terribly.
Right. Like, yeah, and I don't know. I honestly do think the NLI stuff helps, where it's like, they're having the pressures of, like, deals and management up front, where it's like, okay, you're basically getting 4 extra years of the NFL experience before you're actually on an NFL team. Like, this being a job is more underlined for you. And, like, you have to show up with a certain level of professionalness and, like, egolessness in a job, or you're getting your ass fired.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this sound like an old man rant, I guess, but that is not something I want to see from my early draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, it's the Bears.
Yeah.
Who just have on one hand, it's like they'll deal with it because they've never had a quarterback before, but also, are they willing to deal with it because they've never had a good quarterback before?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that if the Bears screw this up, and I guess we can get a little bit more into the draft after this, statement. If the Bears screw this up, I think that the office is going to be cleaned out. Like, not even close to being like, all right, we'll just get rid of the coach and that's it. I'm thinking GM, head coach, OC, DC, like, pretty far down the line. If they somehow blow this season.
A lot of football fans have been through a lot. Like, you endure a lot if you're a football fan. People will straight up just not be Bears fans if this goes south.
Yeah. And if you want to look at like some examples of like the ability to turn things around, you have the Texans, who was number 2 overall, not traded to number 2, earned number 2 overall last season. And now technically they don't have a first round pick because of they traded, but their first pick this year would have been 23. And that is from a traded pick. The one they earned was 27.
Right. Which is such a baller move that they somehow swung that.
Like, that is a clearly great workaround. And for like the Bears, they have I would say probably an easy adjacent schedule. Because their own conference pretty tough, or their own division pretty tough. They have Green Bay, who's kind of like was a sleeper team last year. Detroit Lions, who showed up with the fury of 1,000 suns. The Vikings also played games. And then they got the Rams, Titans, Patriots, Panthers, Seahawks, Commanders, 49ers, Texans. Like, they got some mid to lower tier teams, and then Texans, San Fran, and whatever the hell Jacksonville may or may not be. Same with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm excited when we talk about broader. Like, we've decided we'll talk more about free agency after the draft. Those Jaguars never disappoint.
No, they do not. They always
They never disappoint in their perfect middle of the road expensive signings.
Yep. Anyway, so.
But yeah, should we dive in with the Bears?
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of needs,
I feel like the most obvious need is the one discussed. I would say quarterback.
Right. Yes, quarterback, which is going to be their first pick, and then just becomes a question of what they're looking at with the 9th pick. See, this is what I mean in terms of like rational actors and stuff. Because rationally, they really do need offensive line help. A part of the problem with Justin Fields was the offensive line wasn't great. He didn't help the problem because he's kind of on the reverse spectrum of the pressure to sack rate compared to Caleb Williams. But it sure didn't help. But when you have the 9th, also have the 9th pick by the grace of the Carolina Panthers not being very bright, and you, Ryan Poles and Eberflus will lose their jobs if this doesn't work out, you might go for the big, sexier pick that gives you more immediate star power, damn long-term health. So that's why their other big need is probably wide receiver. In terms of least needed position, because you already said quarterback for most needed, so I'll say wide receiver.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. You got to give your quarterback some weapons.
Right. Him, Keenan Allen for like 2 years, and Roman Dunze or Malik Neighbors will be a pretty good collection to make sure you just have a quarterback get over 30 touchdowns for the first time. Least needed position.
I would say tight end. They got Cole Kmet. Still, right?
Yes, I believe they do still have Cole Kmet.
Right. And he's kind of like, I would say he is top 10, but not top 5 of the tight ends of around this season. But I think one of his biggest faults, and is not really even his fault, is he was working with like kind of a collapsing offensive line, and it didn't work out that well, so he had to be like stupidly quick for that, and he just wasn't that stupidly quick of a tight end. So if
he's a tight end who will always be top 12, but never ever 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 top 5.
Yeah, exactly. All right, who do you think they need least?
Probably defensive end, only because you did the thing again. 2 straight years you traded your 2nd round pick for like a mid-season we need to save our jobs grab.
Yeah.
It was Chase Claypool that really didn't work out.
No.
And then Montez Sweat, who actually was pretty good. And I question how much of their late season surge was like genuine or just like, well, we have to get better by default, right? But the defense really did turn around the minute you got Montez Sweat. And like, yeah, at the end of the day, you need one blue chip pass rusher. So you kind of, as expensive as that was, and as sort of both financially and draft wise, you got the thing you needed. And now you just got to keep it here. And at least then you have an anchor for your defense.
Yeah. But I feel like they have to be smart and not really blow that.
Next up, the second pick in the draft is the Washington
Commanders.
Oh, they're still the Commanders?
They're still the Commanders. For now.
Yes. In terms of needs, I'll go first on this one. The very obvious one, quarterback. See, you want to know what I mean by the whole pressure to sack rate thing? Mm-hmm. Sam Howell was one of the worst last year, and it
by far.
showed. Because that was a putrid, miserable, awful, shitty, bad, boomba offense. It was so, like, he truly just, and like, maybe he could develop with time, maybe he got thrown into the fire, but that man showed no ability to mentally process what was happening around him. And it just made the entire offense a slog. Yeah. And you can tell that 2 times Jacoby Brissett came in, suddenly the offense could roll and wheel and deal, and had just enough talent to at least stay competitive in games. Mm-hmm. Like truly, I think Sam Howell might have like scared the NFL off an entire generation of quarterbacks. Even though in reality, the problem was like too many young quarterbacks starting. Offensive line sort of development has stagnated while defensive lines have gotten bigger and scarier. But anyway, yeah, so they're probably going quarterback here. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt about which one. Apparently, they invited basically every quarterback prospect to play Topgolf, and Jalen Daniels got mad about that.
Yeah, that's like one of those. I feel like it makes you being a higher pick overall seem less special.
Mm.
But also, I respect that for just being like we're not looking for who's graded to be the top 3 guys. We're looking for the guy who we like the best.
Mm.
Kind of going into my side of things, it's like the same argument with the Bears. There is a level of like you need a QB and you need an O-line for the basics.
Mm.
And if you are one of those like bottom 4 teams, you're probably lacking really hard in both of those, or you're lacking incredibly hard in one and then some other like skill position where like you have a strong offensive line but a terrible quarterback and the quarterback has no weapons to work with, or you have a great quarterback but you have nothing to throw, no one to throw to, no one to run to, and the offensive line collapses in 0.5 seconds. We'll talk about that later at Carolina Panthers. So I feel like they just need a little bulk there.
Yes, that is a pressing need for them. In terms of low needs, I would say wide receiver. Like, they did lose Curtis Samuel this year, which is hard, but between Dotson, is it Dotson? I always get mixed up.
I think it's Dotson.
Which, I always get mixed up. But
and then there's Dobbins.
Yeah.
Is that the other one you mixed up?
Yeah, that one. And I always am like, is Dotson the one who's on Green Bay? But anyway, between him and Terry McLaurin, you at least have a competent wide receiving group. Not the most depth-filled, but like just once, man, I'd like to see Terry McLaurin with a good quarterback. So I think you could probably pass over wide receiver, at least for the first couple rounds.
Yeah. I would say that, like, not to sound like a one-trick pony, but I'm going to stick with tight end again. They got, what's his name, Logan Thomas, who was another, like, secretly very good tight end that they don't really need to worry about replacing, because the dude would make plays in not a fun fashion. And as a fan of a team that shares the division, so seeing it play twice, I watched a lot of him, and he was pretty damn good. So I'm excited to see what comes from him in the future. All right. Third.
Yes, I think that's a good call.
Yeah, third pick overall is the New England Patriots. What doesn't the Patriots need? They need everything.
Yeah. Can I cheat and can I just cheat and say an offensive player? Okay, you can't include Ramondre Stevenson. Name another person on the New England Patriots offense.
Mac Jones.
No, didn't they trade?
Yeah,
I think
they
traded him already.
Yeah, that's the joke.
I don't even. Where is he?
He's in Jacksonville. He's Trevor Lawrence's backup.
Oh God, there are so many fucking wars about that draft class, and Trevor Lawrence is the only one still on his original team.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is the only one fighting for it.
Yes.
No, there's no disagreements from me. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens, because this will be the first season without Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not. I think he's instituted enough defensive stability to make that not the problem.
Yes. So there's a lot of scuttlebutt about like who's actually making this pick, and it sounds like the Crafts have decided to get really, really involved, which is always a red flag.
That is
in general.
That is one of my biggest red flags of any sports team, is when the owner, who half the time is just a rich dude, gets a little too involved with things. Like, I'm not against them offering their opinions on things, and they should definitely have a choice and like be like, yeah, have we considered this person? But them being the ones to make the lone decision outside of the coach or the GM or somebody that is more there on a day-to-day level, that has the guy from the red flag videos running across my screen.
Yes, it's just so fitting, especially because like apparently that documentary Apple TV did of the Patriots was very Kraft centric.
It seems Nick Foles.
Yes. Oh, petty bitches. He better show up at that Tom Brady roaster. I'm gonna be pissed.
Man, that was
fun. But no, apparently Kraft produced it. Apparently he went out of his way to effectively tank Belichick getting the Falcons job. And also quietly, he's also basically pressuring Columbia to send the send police after all the protesters because he's a donor. But that's another discussion for a different podcast. Yes, but I just have no faith in him making the right call here. In terms of someone described it really well as they need a quarterback, wide receiver, and offensive lineman, which is perfect because this is the one draft that actually kind of has all of those.
Yeah.
And it really just comes down to whoever falls to them at 3. Are they okay taking that quarterback, or they rather punt, get an extra first-round pick, and get one of the tackles, get one of the wide receivers, and just build everything around. If they draft quarterback, they cannot start this year. Simply, it will break them. You brought in Jacoby Brissett. He'll hold the ship down for a year and figure out what you're doing with the damn team. I say.
Yeah, it's literally building for next season. Not even building for this season. You draft someone good. Hot names include Drake May and who's the next quarterback after, because we know it's not going to be Caleb Williams. I can't think of his name. Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, if Drake May's available, I think you kind of have to talk yourself into drafting him.
Yeah, that, and you have to have him in the QB2 slot for year 1, so you can work hard enough to get him up to speed with whatever you want your team to be at new head coach, whose name I don't know because he's not Bill Belichick.
Gerard Mayo.
Sure. And next year, if you're already out of it by December, consider tanking and getting some top tier offensive line. Maybe make some trades for this year, in this year's draft for next year, with some of your higher picks. but they have to be smart.
Mm.
And that's what concerns me about some of these teams, is they have to be smart, and I have no faith in them to be smart. For the least needed position on the Patriots, I put not Ackable. They need somebody everywhere.
Right. You know, most defensive positions, actually, their defense wasn't bad last year. It actually is pretty infuriating. Like, I have to imagine being a Patriots fan was infuriating, because it's like, if you could have even gotten bargain basement level offensive competency, you probably could have won like 7 or 8 games. You would have done better than the Jets at the bare minimum. So I'm just going to say defense, I suppose.
Yeah. And you know it's sad when we have to just be generic about it.
Right.
All right. 4th pick is the Cardinals, who also have the 27th pick. So they have 2 first-rounders.
Yes. So for them, for me, it is pointedly star wide receiver. There's been a lot of talk that they could trade down because it's a depthful wide receiver class, but I'm like, guys, do not get cute. Like, the Cardinals have been really good at accumulating a lot of picks, but at some point, like I said, you just need stars. At some point, it's like, you can't brag about, like, well, look at all this draft capital we have. Look at how many guys we can get. Like, you want to know the importance of a star? The Titans traded A.J. Brown, tried to replace him, and the whole thing fell apart. Yeah. You have to make sure you get one of the big 3 between Marvin Harrison Jr.,
correct,
Rome Odunze, and Malik Nabers. Correct. I would just say, just stay there and get Marvin Harrison Jr. You have plenty of other picks if you want to trade back in and get one of the other guys.
1, 2, and 3.
Or get something else.
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3 desperately need quarterbacks. That's a fact and a half. Them trading anywhere to not just go for Marvin Harrison Jr. would be a waste.
Yes. Like, truly, you could not have been blessed better with this draft position, because, yeah, again, you basically get the first pick of the draft.
Yeah.
Because, once the quarterbacks are gone, and to be fair, Caleb Williams is the best guy on the big board, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is the second best.
Yes.
And maybe you decide, hey, he's not quite the flavor we're looking for in a wide receiver. Even getting the other 2 is still a huge victory in terms of, you basically have your pick of the litter of every other offensive player in this draft.
That's kind of why they don't need a QB, because they have Kyler. They have faith in Kyler. Kyler kind of showed up last season. I don't want to give him full credit, because they still ended terribly, but also it's not 100% his fault. Because he didn't have a lot to work with. A wide receiver would really benefit that team, and maybe some help in the mid to defensive line to the mid backfield, like a cornerback or a linebacker's style, could help him out.
Yes.
But
the quote I love about Marvin Harrison Jr. is his ceiling is A.J. Brown. His floor is, A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Or he's one of those guys who old coots like me will be grabbing our children being like, no, you don't understand how good he was. It's not his fault he was on a bad team his entire career. But the good news is, this team isn't that bad right now. It's actually kind of decent, record notwithstanding.
Yeah.
And,
what did we call them?
Kyler Murray was...
Didn't we call them the best worst team?
Yeah, easily the best worst team to ever do it. For position of least need, I'd probably say offensive tackle, only because they just invested in that. They traded back to get Paris Johnson Jr. last year, who looked very, very good. And, yeah, I think in general, when you have Kyler Murray, whose whole thing is kind of, moving outside the pocket anyway, competent is all you need. He doesn't... Just make sure he doesn't have to run for his life on every play.
Mm-hmm.
With the 5th pick, this is one of the more interesting ones, because this is where things could get really funky.
This is Chargers territory.
The LA Chargers.
San Diego Chargers. St. Louis Chargers.
So, the California Raisins. So, for need, they kind of need to rebuild everything, to be honest, but... Yeah. I guess again, this is what we're talking about with rational actors, because for some reason, despite having one of the strongest arms in the league, they've decided to pivot to a sort of ground and pound style offense. They've dumped out a lot of the old weight. They're kind of reimagining. They brought in Greg Roman, who was running Lamar Jackson to the ground. His exact quote was, "Imagine if Justin Herbert had a good running game." And I'm like, bitch, I've never seen him with a good passing game. So my gut says tackle here. And I guess just the question is, do you just take the tackle you want here? There's a lot of different options. This is actually a really robust offensive line draft that is kind of like a pick your flavor. Joe Alt is considered the best tackle. He's the best all-around, best pass blocker, but they might lean toward Talisi Fuga or Troy Fontenot in terms of more mean motherfuckers. But yeah, despite needing really wide receiver help, because again, I don't know who they have at wide receiver right now, they'll probably go tackle.
Yeah. Tackle or guard, something on the offensive line seems like the most logical course. I'm going to call out a little bit of a wild cardy pick here. I'm going to say they're going to go for a running back. I don't know why I want to say that, but
yes,
that seems right to me for some reason. Of just them going after, because it's not like an amazing running back class this year, but something screams that they're gonna try and out scheme and maybe trade up a little bit, not super far. They go from 5th, maybe they trade with the Vikings, who I believe are gonna truly trade up at some capacity for in the top 10 from 11, and maybe they'll trade up
and we will talk about them
5 to 11 and maybe a second rounder and go for a running back.
Yes, it is so funny though. All the talk Jim Harbaugh had about JJ McCarthy, he's a real dog. He's best. I would draft him in a heartbeat. And I'm like, call the Bears up and offer them Justin Herbert. Do it. You won't.
You coward.
You coward. Yes, I could. Yeah, they will definitely have to go for a running back at some point. This class is actually not terrible running back wise. Just not a lot of guys you would draft in the first round.
Yeah,
there's a couple guys who are exciting, but yes. In terms of least needed, quarterback's the lazy obvious one.
Yes,
but God, they really do need a lot, huh?
Oh yeah. I'm going the lazy obvious one, and I would say I'm going lazy obvious.
Damn you!
You can pick the same thing, Carter. No one established it. It was never a rule that we had to pick different things. We can agree on things.
Fair enough. I mean, they kind of need a defensive end because Khalil Mack is very old and Joey Bosa can't stay healthy. But I feel like they're going to punt on that for at least one more year.
Yeah, they're going to figure out what to do with the long term. On Bosa.
Yeah, his knees don't work right no more.
The New York Football Giants.
Oh man,
what don't
you want to go first on this one?
I don't know.
Yeah, another one where you could just kind of put offense.
I would say, yeah, just offense in general. Probably wide receiver. Sure, they lost Saquon, but they invested way too much into Danny Dimes to kind of not try to make him work still. Because he got that fat contract, and then he kind of blew up. Actually, can I change what they need the most is to a new field? Is that possible? Or are we sticking exclusively players?
I'll let you have that one.
They need a new field.
It really is like a divorced parent situation who are just getting it out so the kids get to college with Danny Dimes.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what these. I'm going to say, here's what I'll say, offensive star. They need to get one of the wide receivers or Brock Bowers or someone who can make a play to get the fans to be more okay with Saquon Barkley going.
Want him, yeah, and to want to be there again.
Right. In terms of me talking about rational actors and stuff, the Giants are kind of a great example of that. Because in that draft where they got Saquon Barkley, it was a quarterback-heavy class. It was the Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. And they were like, no, let's go for the sure thing. Let's go for Saquon Barkley, especially because that Justin Herbert is going to come out next year, and we'll still be in rebuilding mode, so we can get him. Justin Herbert decides to stay in college for another year, and they absolutely panic. They go like, I guess we're going with Danny Dimes. Yeah. Disco Dimes, baby. And when that was obviously a disaster in the first year, instead of just biting the bullet saying, yes, we wasted that pick, but let's just move on, doing the Josh Rosen. Yeah, they doubled down. It's exactly that. They could have just been adults, said, this isn't going to work. Like, let's do the right thing. But then they didn't. And then they got stuck because then they bring in a coach to fix him who gets him just good enough for him to have the team over a barrel. And then you have to trade away arguably the best offensive player you've ever had on this team in the history of the New York Giants because you can't afford to keep both of them. Like, truly not rational actors. And so many people are screaming, get a quarterback for them. And I'm like, you can't keep going down this loop of reaching for the quarterback when it's not the right time.
Yeah.
Especially if, like, the big three end up going. Like, if the option is J.J. McCarthy, so help me God if you try to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, there's so many good there's so many good early choices for quarterbacks. Kind of like last year's draft pick class, where it's like you want one of the big three, and then you're kind of off to the side for quarterbacks to like the second or third round. If you don't get one of the big three, which teams 1, 2, and 3 in the draft need one, excuse me, you kind of you should pivot your strategy to something different. Least needed, I would say quarterback, because they invested so much into Danny Dimes that they can't back out now, you know?
Yeah, I see her. I mean, they need a quarterback, but it's just like,
but
it's more like you need so many other things.
Yeah, you need something for said quarterback, and you also need money that you're not just, I don't want to say wasting, but not utilizing properly with Danny Dimes.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess I would just say, I don't know, tight end man. I'm pretty sure Darren Waller retired, but I'm like, not now, guys, not now. Tight end is the vanity position you get after you've made the playoffs.
Yeah, tight end is when you have a solid lineup already, and then you just kind of go, all right, like, we can now focus on the more like weirdly specialty players like tight end and kicker and stuff. Number 7 is the Tennessee Titans.
Oh, that's easy. Their big thing is offensive line. They've already spent a lot on wide receiver. They brought in, I believe Tony Pollard. They're the team that got Tony Pollard,
I think
right?
Yeah. I think they
Let me double check that so I don't spread false information on the internet.
No.
Guys, sorry. It's not actually the Deception Show.
Yeah.
No, he is. Like, he burned me in fantasy football, but that was more me learning, like, hey, a broken leg still matters. Well, yes. But also, like, hey, if a guy broke his leg in the calendar year, trust that's going to take a little longer for him to get back. But yeah, they're basically just putting all the chips toward building a competent offense. So within the next calendar year, they could be like, Will Levis, you either got it or you don't.
Yeah, no.
So I would keep going in that course of action.
Yeah, I would also say O-line. They're clearly, like, they've been secretly building pretty strongly in the, like, offensive skill position spot, but their offensive line was what folded the most. So them picking up, like, a big center like Jackson Powers Johnson or maybe Zach Frazier as, like, solid early picks, like, to kind of start something big.
Yes. Yeah, honestly, that's a sensible pick. They are just interesting for me because I feel like they're the inflection point where if someone desperately wants one of the big 6 between the 3 quarterbacks and the 3 wide receivers, this is going to be the, like, someone gets desperate and trades all their potato chips for him.
Yeah, they couldn't.
Like, if the Bills are really keen on getting Rome Odunze, they're going to have to figure out how to make it work here.
Yeah, the Titans have done I would say, just enough during the offseason so far. We'll talk about it more next week to get away with trading down and not losing some of their top prospects that they should absolutely get first.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Again, it's another one where it's like you kind of whatever. It's more what offense are you imagining building right now, as opposed to you need the best guy.
Yeah, and
in terms of least needed, wide receiver. Yeah, mostly because it's like, I know you kind of overpaid for Calvin Ridley, but don't use that as an excuse to add more depth there.
Calvin Ridley, D-Hop, Tony Pollard,
Treylon Burks. I still want to believe in.
Treylon Burks isn't. I don't think
he's terrible by the standard that you needed him to be as good as A.J. Brown in his first year, and he wasn't.
I think he is not a wide receiver 1 yet, but definitely could be considered wide receiver 2, not with the crew they currently have, but a good choice for wide receiver 3.
Next up is the Atlanta Falcons.
I don't know what they.
So this might actually be our first defensive player off the board, because I think D-line.
Yeah, because what do they have? Kirk Cousins as their new starting quarterback. They have Kyle Pitts still, right?
Yes. Drake London, Bijan. Yes. Yeah. Well, skipping ahead to least needs, they're not allowed to pick an offensive skill player. Like, someone should just throw the card out if they do that. Because, come on now. You just spent that much on Kirk Cousins. You have to make it work. But their D-line has been historically bad for way too long. I think they've had the least amount of sacks in the NFL, 2 to 3 out of the last 5 years. At some point, you have to start spending on the unfun positions, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit further back and say linebacker for them. They kind of go... It's kind of like just they got to build their defense stronger. Because they have on paper, solid offense for what they currently have.
Right.
Them drafting an offensive player at 8, wouldn't be unheard of, but they don't need to focus on that. And with Artie out, probably can manipulate some strings. All right, who's 9? 9 is the Bears again. We already talked about them.
Yes.
10 is the Jets.
Well, it's funny because that leads us into the New York Jets. I actually have a very similar opinion for both the New York Jets and the Atlanta Falcons. In reality, both of these teams should be trying to draft a quarterback. It's actually irresponsible that the current administrations have not thought ahead to have some kind of plan in place beyond their 35-plus-year-old quarterbacks with torn Achilles tendons. But the attitude is, if we don't win now, we're all fucking fired anyway.
Yes. Because
the Jets have been one of the Sisyphusian disasters of the NFL, and the Falcons owner is starting to age and be sad. The Jets, it should be offensive tackle, but this is what I mean. Rational actors. Again, they're like, we need to win now or we're all fucking fired.
Yes.
So they are probably going wide receiver. It wouldn't surprise me if they get another offensive weapon. Possible pass catcher, because I do think Brock Bowers, the sort of enigmatic tight end of this class, who probably would be a top 5 pick in any other draft, and if Kyle Pitts didn't exist.
Yeah. I think Kyle Pitts created a little bit of a fear of being a tight end, like a high-ranking tight end.
Which my counterpoint is, did you watch Desmond fucking Ridder?
No
one was going to succeed.
Yeah, but I never said it was Kyle Pitts' fault. I think it's just nobody wants to be the Kyle Pitts or draft the next Kyle Pitts. I'm going to go defensive line. They've had a couple losses there, and they need to be... I feel like their offense has a lot of potential, and Aaron Rodgers. Not in Aaron Rodgers. They have a lot of potential and Aaron Rodgers.
Ugh, amen to that.
And they should focus. They should shift the focus a little bit because their defensive backfield, in my opinion, is secretly one of the better. Like, is a top 50% of the league defensive backfield. Like, that's solid.
Yes.
Their offensive side makes sense. On paper isn't bad. And that defensive line, and kind of the offensive line too, is that hiccup. I'm going to say that I don't need a quarterback because of the investment in Aaron Rodgers. They lost a lot because of that.
God, what a shit show. Truly miraculous, lovely, hilarious. Truly, it's what the New York franchise deserves, to be stuck in this nightmare. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to say, I mean, they really need offensive line. Like, seriously, both their tackles are like 34. I'm going to say running back because I think Breece Hall is, yeah, in terms of like talking about like why, for example, like why the Eagles would give up so much to get Saquon Barkley. Because Saquon, Breece, McCaffrey, sometimes Derrick Henry, even though he's older, there are like 5 running backs in this league who are absolutely worth any amount of money because they can just say, all right, I'm taking this game over, and just go on a heater that fundamentally changes the geometry of the game. And I think Breece Hall is that, and I will truly die angry and never trust Brandon Beane for having him available to draft and instead picking Kyrie Elam, physical man cornerback in a zone for your zone defense.
Yeah. Next pick is
anyway
the Minnesota Football Vikings.
They have the 11th pick.
They have the 11th pick. Yeah, they're not very high, but they also have another first-round pick, courtesy of Houston trading away their pick they got from Cleveland because they're still gaining from the fucking Deshaun Watson trade.
So funny.
Which bold strategy by Houston for trading away both of their first-round picks, by the way, because they had 2. And
right.
We can talk about that.
And yet they did invest in the team. I do feel good about, like, I appreciate that they aren't sitting on their laurels.
No. I think they've been very smart. But that's for when we get to them, because their first pick is number 42, so we still got a while for them. Minnesota Vikings need a new quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Who's their backup?
They cannot do Sam Darnold. They can't make us all do the Sam Darnold dance. I can't. I mean, I'd love it for the discourse. I truly would. It would be very funny. But they can't.
They can't rely on him. I think with them having a later pick 2 in the first round, they are going to gamble something and trade up. Whether it be
a
second round pick, whether it be that second first round pick, they're going to trade up to, I would say, at least top 7 or higher.
Yes. It is basically an open secret that the plan is for them to trade up and get J.J. McCarthy or whoever the next best quarterback is.
Whoever Justin they kind
of
have
burned their boats on it. Yes. And they kind of have to. They've kind of burned the boats on this. Like, if they don't get a quarterback, like, all of this was built around, like, we have a competent enough team that we can kind of spend all the capital to get J.J. McCarthy. Hey, what if Kirk Cousins was younger and his leg, he didn't have an Achilles tear? And be like, yeah, we can probably get a couple playoff wins out of that. J.J. McCarthy is just so fascinating because he truly is like a mystery box. Someone described it well as it's like he is an exciting enigma because the way the team played to be successful hid whether or not he was actually good or not. But you can fill in your brain whatever, like, he could have won the game if they needed him to. He can be anything. He could even be a Drake May. But yeah, if they don't come out of this having traded up to like 5, 6, 7 to get who they wanted, it's kind of a disaster for them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what are they? And then it's like, are you really going to go with Bo Nix? Are you really going to put on a brave face and be like Michael Penix? Are you really going to be Spencer Rattler, the guy who famously lost his job to Caleb Williams?
Yeah.
I'm very curious.
It's going to be interesting who they pick, but I'm more interested in how they get there. They don't need to try and replace Justin Jefferson.
Right. Their wide receiving core is actually very strong.
It's secretly very good. Yeah, it's secret.
I'm going to say... I'm trying to think who I think they should go for here, or avoid here. I guess defensive line. Like, the thing is, Brian Flores is their coach. They get pressure through blitzing, so I feel like the whole point of that is you can spend less on defense and still get results through strategy and sheer gusto. So, yeah, I'm going to say D-line just so we have a different one there.
Yeah. All right, who do we have next?
Sheer gusto. Who is next?
Who's 12?
Well,
Denver Broncos. Broncos country, let's ride.
Do they still get to use that?
I don't know. You know what they need? New catchphrase. Russell Wilson's gone.
Yes.
Zach Wilson's there. I gotta send you the photo my sister sent me.
Oh, God. Can I just cheat and say they need bodies?
I mean, my answer is new catchphrase, so I feel like bodies is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Because that's the thing. They just have so little talent. Their offensive line isn't very good. They got rid of Jerry Jeudy. Courtland Sutton, I'm fully out on.
I've been out on Sutton for years.
Yeah, at some point I get tired of the guys who's like, well, if they just had a good quarterback. And I'm like, Sammy Watkins was a 1,000-yard receiver with E.J. Manuel and Kyle Orton and was in the NFL top 100 before the injuries and alcoholism took him down. A good wide receiver can make it work with anyone. I don't want to hear it. They just need some kind of talent. I genuinely don't know what they're going to do. Because it sounds like one of the reasons why Minnesota hasn't been able to make the trade is because Denver has been, puttering around being like, what if we trade literally all of the last couple picks we have? The ones that did get pilfered by the Saints and Seahawks and go get, a quarterback. And I'm like, no, stop! The team is so bad! You can't burn through more picks. An actual, I don't know, maybe Brock Bowers, maybe a lineman. I don't know, man. Truly, the only thing they don't need is defensive backs, because I do feel bad for Patrick Surtain because he's always going to be remembered as, hey, remember when we drafted this guy instead of a quarterback and now we're in hell?
Yeah. He was the wrong pick at the time, but he's not a wrong pick. Side note, apparently, according to this Instagram post, the Broncos quarterback room, maybe they should be trading up for a quarterback. Zach Wilson, Jarrett Stidham, and Ben DiNucci, known of Seattle Sea Dragons fame.
There's been scuttlebutt that they might go get Bo Nix because he's vaguely Drew Brees-like in the sense that he's older and small and doesn't have a very strong arm. And I'm like, yeah, but that's none of the positive things about Drew Brees.
No.
Drew Brees had positive things about him. Honestly, big positives that made up for all the other things.
The secret move, trading for somebody's backup QB. That's the secret move. I don't know whose. I mean, they could have Pickett.
If they weren't paying Russell Wilson so much, they should have just offered the farm to a new Jacoby Brissett or somebody to gut it out. Well, truly, this whole thing is just everyone wanted the Walmart. The original owners were selling the team to the Walmart family, and they're like, let's get Aaron Rodgers because that'll make the price go up. But then they couldn't get Aaron Rodgers. But they had already hired Nathaniel Hackett because they thought he could get Aaron Rodgers. And Nathaniel Hackett's like, oh, Aaron Rodgers will do all the work. Then they get Russell Wilson, who wants the Walmart money. And then everything falls apart. And then Sean Payton's like, oh, you're going to offer me more money than any coach has ever gotten? Hell yeah, I'll take that, even if I don't actually want to coach this team. I don't know. The one thing I've been radicalized on is actually Russell Wilson was really bad last year. It wasn't just Sean Payton sabotaging him.
No.
You go back and watch the full games and you're like, woof. It's got nothing here.
Yeah. Next is the Las Vegas Raiders.
This is actually a curious one because there's a lot of different ways to approach this.
I think this is one of those star power ones. I think they need an offensive. I mean, here's the thing. They're technically, as of right now, their starting QB is theoretically going to be Gardner Minshew Madness, which him in Vegas is theoretically makes sense. He held together the Colts last year after Anthony Richardson's injury. Has some strong weapons. I feel like they can make something happen with him. Like I think they need another big star. I don't know who, but I think they just need another big star.
I can see that, but my stance is they have to be willing to be boring. The problem they've had is they've been willing to spend on kind of like big flashy trades. Like, McDaniels was so desperate to build a winning team. They got that weird year where they somehow made the playoffs with Carr. That year Gruden got fired and Henry Ruggs went to jail. And McCown came in and he's like, I can keep this going even though this team has huge holes and kind of needs a rebuild. So they get Davante Adams. They keep Hunter Renfrow. I think he's actually not on the team anymore. So they could use a wide receiver, honestly. Like, they have just enough talent they should be competing, but they don't have enough talent where it's going to be real, if that makes sense. Yeah. I really think they should just go for one of the offensive tackles and just start building this thing organically. But deep down, I know they're going to go for the quarterback.
Yeah. And I don't know what this is. I don't know what the least needed for them would be.
I would say defensive line, just because Crosby, they've already paid Crosby.
Yeah.
And, I get it. I get why they're not just trading all these guys away. It's the same reason I understand, they're not trading Patrick Surtain away. Because it's at some point, it's you just need talent in the room. If you manage to actually get talent, you don't want to lose it. Because then you look like an idiot.
All right, 14 is the Saints.
Easy offensive line. They so desperate need they don't have it. I don't know who their offensive line is right now.
Yeah. Do you want to go interior offensive line and I'll go exterior offensive line?
Deal.
Yeah.
But yes, their offensive tackle they drafted in 2022 is a bust. The right tackle I'm pretty sure had an ACL tear or something. They're stuck with Carr for another year at least. He's very, very expensive. It would be even worse than it'll almost be as bad as the Russell Wilson contract getting off of that. And the bubbles burst. The dream of making the playoffs is dead. You gotta just start building that line.
Yeah, building the line strong, and they have enough. They have enough talent to make things work with a strong offensive line, and being at that almost halfway point pick. Solid offensive linemen will still be there because they don't need the high caliber stars of I almost said waterback and a quad receiver, a quarterback and a wide receiver.
Yes, a waterbender and a guy who just works out his quads.
Yep.
Lovely. In terms of what they don't need, please do not draft a quarterback early. Please don't try and trade up for one again.
Don't go for it. I'm not against them trading.
Hey, let's always compete.
I'm not against them trading up. I'm against them trading up for a quarterback.
Right. The dream of you guys keeping the salary cap thing going and making the playoffs is just over, man. You just gotta let go. Gotta let go.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is the Indianapolis Colts.
I liked how. I think I'm leaning defense for them. Their offense is pretty solid. They could use a little bit of a booster in the offensive line room, but that doesn't. They don't need it so badly to use their first round pick on it. They can pick someone up in the second and third and have them play backup for a year or two first. I think I'm leaning towards the defensive backfield.
Yeah. I'm going to go wide receiver because at every position other than quarterback where it's still a little bit wait and see, they have guys who are good, not great. Yeah. Well, I guess Jonathan Taylor's great, but in terms of wide receiver and tight end room, like Michael Pittman had a really, really good year last year and got
Correct.
paid accordingly, but I still don't view him as a pure-blooded, true blue number one.
No,
I think they are actually a very good trade-up candidate, honestly.
Really?
If for some reason Rome or Malik fall down, like if they get past 9, I'm like, why not just trade like a first and a second to get like a full-blown superstar?
Yeah, and there's a couple, like, we already talked about the couple teams that it would make sense for them to trade something to try and get something out of it. They don't need to worry about replacing Anthony Richardson. He had he had his freshman year injuries, but he'll
I'm really just hoping that was a fluke because, man, he looked so cool.
Yeah.
In terms of what they don't need, I guess, well, the lazy one's just running back.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, Zach Moss was playing really, really well. I feel like the system is like more than enough to keep it going. Yeah. Zach Moss, who did jack and diddly with the Bills, got to a system that actually encourages running back, and immediately was like, "Oh, I'm good now."
Yep. Seattle Seahawks.
Now this is a fun one. There's a lot of rumblings that they might move off of either Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf. Apparently, they're very happy with Jackson Smith and are ready to kind of like start cleaning the room a bit.
I think they could. I would say somebody though. I think.
Oh yeah.
I think their best.
Or another team.
I think their best option might be a trade. Like.
Yeah.
Because they're 16th. They're dead center of the first round. They don't have too much of a lack of depth where they don't need people. Freaking Bobo last year, Jackson Smith. DK's getting a little up there in age, but he's still able to hold his own. Quarterback wise, they're pretty solid with Geno. And is Drew Lock still their backup, or vice versa? Anyway, they're pretty solid in like their positions. I think the best option for them would be a solid trade for like the pick for a decently good player.
Yeah, if they're going to because they are kind of in no man's land where it's like, do you just take one of the tackles, get a blue chipper? Do you like take advantage of the fact that it's a thin defensive class and just get your pick of the group?
Yeah.
I guess I'd go offensive line just because.
Build something there. I think the majority of the offensive linemen is going to be in the top third of the second round at the latest, and then not again to like round 4 or 5.
And then in terms of things they don't need,
I don't think they need a new wide receiver yet. Maybe in a year or two, but I don't think they need one yet.
I would say defensive backfield because they actually have invested in that a lot. It's starting to show a little bit of life again. Witherspoon ended up being a boon for them last year.
Yeah. No, he was highly underrated last year.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. They're just like kind of a boring team because they're like they're good. They're just good, which is kind of where like is a decent enough place to be.
Yeah. Next is the Jaguars.
Is it crazy that I think, despite paying, well, no, they had to overpay Gabe Davis because they lost Calvin Ridley. I actually think they need a wide receiver still.
I was thinking wide receiver is a possibility too, but also I'm not gonna sleep on the fact I think they need like a linebacker cornerback situation. That seemed where a lot of their gaps were. And what they don't really need.
Well,
yeah, because I don't really have much to say about. Like, they didn't blunder the free agency. They picked up Mac Jones as a backup QB, which was a choice. Definitely was a choice.
I would argue I'd argue they're another team that just kind of needs a star. The problem is, like, they have a guy who is a good quarterback, despite what some people will tell you. And the problem is they've just surrounded him with a lot of, like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that guy's good. Like, could he just get one true blue elite receiver? We thought it was going to be Calvin Ridley, who had his ups and downs. Like, I just, at some point you just need, like, guys who aren't the back second stringers on other teams.
Yeah, you need your own stars.
You need to be a serious franchise here, not just a scrappy bunch of guys.
Yeah.
They're a team that might get relegated if they blow this quarterback thing.
Yeah.
Again, like, the Colts got so much heat for what happened with Andrew Luck. They're only just getting out of that pit.
Yeah, they're just kind of building themselves out of that. What they don't need, I don't think they need a new coaching staff. I think
that's an interesting.
It's a very interesting take, especially with how, because like last year they didn't do bad. They were one of the top teams for the majority of the season. And what happened to them wasn't them losing. It was this weird secret feud between the Houston Texans and the Colts, where they were just kept one-upping each other, and Jacksonville kind of like, they blew the last game a little bit to get not in the playoffs, but they were definitely a playoff caliber team for the majority of the season. I think they just had some shortcomings and some, not injuries, but lack of long-term qualities. So I think that they don't need a new coaching staff because they proved the last 2 seasons that they can make shit happen. Mm-hmm. And then they just get outplayed, which kind of goes into the factor of you saying they need a star.
Yeah. I mean, mine is just going to be quarterback on the grounds of, I feel like we're losing sight of, he really is good.
Yeah. He'll show you. He'll be a star one day.
It would be so funny if, God, wouldn't that be funny if Rodgers flames out, everyone gets fired in New York, and then the new GM is like, 5 first-round picks for Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville. You're going to have to pay him in a year, and you aren't winning with him. What do you say? And then the Jets are actually good.
Yeah. Which, bizarro trade, but it's worked in the past. Next is your Cincinnati football Bengals.
God, these spoiled sons of bitches always find a way to get... I kind of side with Brandon Beane on the whole, like, well, we haven't been bad enough to get picks like that. And it's like, well, that's a cope. But also, like, come on, man. The year they probably need a wide receiver or a tackle, they get a higher draft pick because Burrow got hurt.
Yeah. I'm going to say O-line. They need someone on the line. They need help.
Yeah, it's... At some point, you have to at least try to make the line better.
Yeah, they have the skill positions pretty damn down.
Right. I will say, though, I'm probably going to do wide receiver just because T. Higgins has already asked for a trade. And also, Hendrickson, the D end, is asking for a trade, too. And it's like, man, they had such a tiny window to win the Super Bowl before having kind of a cheapo owner was going to come back to bite them square in the butt. I would say they should look around at running back, but I don't think they should. I prefer them not to draft one.
Yeah, I think that's another one of the conversations of it's not a first round need, but it is kind of a need. Who else? Yeah, that's really it. We're at this weird middle of the pack where everyone's kind of like, meh.
Yeah, it's kind of like depth needs. I do think the Bengals are another trade-up candidate because, like, if they really think they're going to lose T. Higgins, either just trade him now and get, like, one of the big guys, or move up a couple picks, get Brian Robinson Jr., and basically recreate the LSU offense, but instead of Justin Jefferson, it's Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone's saying with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. It's similar to Chase and Jefferson in terms of structure, where it's like the same criticisms of Justin Jefferson of like, well, he's kind of a deep ball guy. His routes aren't that polished. And it's like, well, they didn't ask him to do any of that. And Ja'Marr Chase and Malik Neighbors are kind of 1-for-1, but Ja'Marr Chase is more stout and like breaking tackles, and Malik Neighbors is just like, he's Ricky Bobby mixed with Lightning McQueen.
Yeah.
Or if Ricky Bobby was driving
Ricky Bobby. That's a separate thing. That's a Disney-esque episode, honestly.
Yeah, I'm actually making a note. We got a lot to talk about tomorrow on our episode, but I'm writing that one down.
Yeah, while you're writing that down, the Los Angeles Rams at number 19.
See, they're a sneaky team for quarterback, but on the other hand, at the same time, I do think it's like, again, when Matthew Stafford retires, Sean McVay will retire. Yeah. So he can just be like, it's the next guy's problem to sort out. I don't need to worry about that right now.
Yeah.
Even though
I don't think this is like, they don't need a quarterback because they got Stafford. Oh, you know what? They need an Aaron Donald replacement.
Oh, yeah. I kind of did. God, that is wild. He just retired. He probably could have broken the all-time sack record if he just played for, because Bruce Smith really kind of like dogged it out for an extra 3 or 4 years past his prime just to get to 200. And I'm like, Aaron Donald probably could have done that too, but I guess I'll give him credit for being like, I want to retire while I'm still very healthy.
That's something I respect about like modern day athletes, is they kind of go until like there was this period of time before 2003 where you go until you're pretty much dead on the field and people are like, my God, put him down.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you of all people respect that, because coming from a wrestling perspective, I really do feel like a lot of those guys just get stuck in that situation where it's like, well, I have to keep wrestling even if I'm in terrific blinding pain.
That's where the drugs came in, and then most of them died before the age of 50 because of drugs or other severe issues and mental problems. But it's like now a lot of wrestlers now, a lot of football players now, like there is a better understanding of personal health and stuff, and more than just you play the sport. And obviously more money's involved, but it's like, all right, I'm going to stop here and not and my body can't keep up, so I'm not going to put myself in my own coffin trying to play on this thing. Meanwhile, you have R-Truth, who's 52 years old and is doing fucking jumping splits and backflips and shit. Dude's 52 and he's in better shape than all of us combined.
God, I know. No amount of running will fix that. Yeah, I'm also going to say offensive line, which has kind of been the Achilles heel of this team the entire Stafford era. Like, kind of what went wrong that year they sucked was just, they literally don't have any depth at offensive line.
Yeah, and they have like a moderately... The teams that they're playing are either clearly easy or clearly hard. There isn't like middle ground teams. Like it's like the Cardinals and the Patriots. Oh no, like outside of their division, the Lions and the Dolphins. It's like so all over the place. So I don't know what they don't need. Like there's some teams where they don't need it because they have to focus otherwhere. And then there's just them where it's like they're not really slacking in any department specifically.
Yeah. I mean, if they wanted to be cute, they could get another wide receiver, but they're probably good. I do love it's so funny now. With Ladd McConkey, anytime a white receiver with a little bit of swag comes out, they're like, Cooper Kupp. And I'm like, Cooper Kupp is a freaking sociopath who treats his body like a high-end, like, sports car. Yeah. Like, literally sciencing out how hard, like, what he needs to do to keep his 40 time the same as he gains 5 pounds. And what made Puka Nacua special was he came into an environment, immediately saw that and went, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then they became best friends.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like, Puka and Cup as, like, a 1 and 2 is a very great combination.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, I'd probably put wide receiver also because, like, I don't know, they kind of just do need a little more depth everywhere. They're a little too star-dependent still right now.
Yeah. It's after 1920. Who the hell's 20? Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they don't need a quarterback. They got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, two previously starting quarterbacks.
Steelers Nation, light it up.
I was hoping for Steelers Nation, let's weld. I liked that one the best.
Right, but I feel like he's gonna want to change. He's gonna want to change the word to like indicate he's changed. I mean, in reality, Justin Fields should probably start day one. But like Justin Fields, and I don't want to talk too much about free agency stuff, but Justin Fields is like the perfect middle ground. Like I think people are scared of the Daniel Jones thing again, where it's like, shoot, he's gonna have one good year, and then we're gonna have to pay him too much, and then we're not gonna be able to recreate that year, and it's gonna cost us all our jobs.
Yep.
Like you kind of can't gamble on that happening. It's kind of the same problem. Their problems has been the same problem basically since Ben Roethlisberger was there. They need to build an offensive line. For some reason, they've just been weirdly stubborn, and a part of it is like some of the picks haven't worked out. They just need some kind of like consistent talent at offensive line, so they can at least like.
They got Isaac Seumalo last season, and he has been he was killing it the games that I would watch. He would be like the only one of the offensive line still keeping their guy back.
Right. And they just need to keep building off of that because it's like, at the end of the day, their offense probably never was going to be good with Kenny Pickett. But you know what doesn't help an offense? Where you have to be in shotgun because your offensive line isn't going to be able to hold their block long enough.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with offensive line because they also have a very solid defense.
Mm-hmm. I also don't think they need a running back because Najee Harris hasn't been necessarily what we want, but he's reliable in that. Waylon.
Who's
the other guy?
Oh, Warren. Warren?
Yes, Warren.
Something to that nature. They're good enough that you don't need to worry about it for the draft. Like, definitely if people are entertaining trade offers for something, I think they're solid enough fodder where you're not fleecing somebody, but you're not getting completely screwed over by what they could be worth. But yeah, they don't need to worry that much there. All right, the 21st team in the draft. I like how I'm just looking at my own sheet. Miami Dolphins. They don't need a wide receiver. They have one.
I think they might draft one, though, because I think they're going to see Xavier Worthy and just be like, what if we go all... Like, because they kind of have to do it this year. Because, like, they're going to have to pay Tua. They're going to have to pay... They've already lost a bunch of guys, actually. Yeah. They lost Wilkins, guard Robert Hunt. Like, if they don't win now, they might actually be in trouble.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, they shouldn't. That's the least needed in a literal sense.
They shouldn't draft a wide receiver. They should draft I think D backfield.
Yes, their defensive backfield is weirdly weak. I'm going to say defensive line because again, 90% of why their defense was good was Christian Wilkins just 8. Also, for some reason, he weirdly got under Josh Allen's skin and would always result in a fight. I'm pretty sure he grabbed Josh Allen's balls at least twice.
Yeah.
He just seemed really good at particularly sort of getting him to get tilted. Least needed, I'm going to say running back.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Achane and
the
Mozart.
System,
Mozart's a running back.
I really didn't think... Yeah. He finally had a healthy year, and he was one of the best running backs in the league. And it's like, damn, why couldn't this have been your whole career, man? You're so fast.
Oh, yeah. It's like one of those, like, you're so good. Please stay healthy. No.
He was like my fantasy darling for forever because I'm like, if he just stays healthy, then he finally did, and I didn't get him.
That's how it be.
Ain't that just the way?
All right, next is the Philadelphia Football Eagles. Cornerback, first round. No questions asked.
Right. I haven't thought a lot about the Eagles because the Eagles just need retooling. The Bills, it's like whether or not Josh Allen sees a Super Bowl is kind of dependent on this. But yeah, their defensive backfield was jaw-droppingly awful last year. Truly, not a tackle could be found here, there, or anywhere.
Yeah,
that feels like the easy one.
It is the easy one because it's right. I think I've seen through rumor mills and stuff. They're gonna try and trade up for it. They have enough like real late picks, like 5th and 6th round picks to make something like give a lot away for like 3 picks for the price of 1 kind of deal. But they need a cornerback in the 1st round.
I would say, I mean, is it lazy to say either offense or defensive line and just like kind of have to keep building the legacy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Just say line for you. They don't. I don't believe they need a like offensive skill.
Yeah.
Devontae Smith.
Well, see, they're the good example
Brown,
of what I mean. They've got
Saquon.
They have all stars.
Yeah.
And you do kind of realize what went wrong last year with the blitzing thing is less they couldn't strategize for it, but the plan was just, well, we have more stars than them. We'll just get it to the stars. And it's like, that's not how anything works. And also, Jalen Hurts' knee hurts.
Yes. Which, God, I hope he's been rehabbing that to make it 100% again. Yeah.
Holy Moses. All right. Who is next on this crusade?
So next would be 23rd pick is Minnesota Vikings again from from Houston, which was from Cleveland, and then after that is the Cowboys.
Well, yeah. Anyone who doesn't have a 1st round pick, let's just loop back around to them when we're done.
Yeah, they're coming. They're coming later. Dallas Cowboys.
They actually need a lot. They lost a bunch of offensive linemen. Their wide. Oh my God! Why am I blanking on his name? Their wide receiver. Oh, Lamb.
No,
CeeDee Lamb is quietly really angry for some reason. They don't have a running back, as best as I can tell. They lost some. They're gonna have to pay. They're gonna have to start paying a lot of their players soon.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say probably offensive line. Like, I feel like you can pave over the wide receiver discord for another year. Like, again, they lost 6 linemen and added 0.
Yeah.
That's insustainable.
The worst team for the free agency, and that's not even me being against.
Right.
The Cowboys.
They just didn't spend any money. It's so weird.
They didn't go for anything.
It's so weird. And even Derrick Henry was like, I would have went to Dallas, but they never called me. And I'm like, did you just not call anyone? And this is where Jerry Jones being the one guy in charge is a problem, because it's like he's getting older and he doesn't seem to have a vision for the team anymore. Did you see that picture of him at the combine with just big scribbles on his notepad? Like, he wasn't drawing anything.
Yeah.
Or he wasn't writing anything. It was just scribbles. And I'm like, maybe that's a stress tick for him. But if Joe Biden had that, people would be talking about removing the president from office, because that would be a red flag of this man is not capable of running an important thing anymore.
Yeah. Oh, what do they need? Getting rid of Jerry Jones.
Yes. Which is easier said than done. So I'm keeping it, what is the Patrick Star line? I want to defeat the giant monkey man and save the 9th dimension. That's great, Patrick, but maybe start a little smaller. I want to defeat the normal-sized monkey man and save the 5th dimension.
Yeah.
In terms of things they don't need, God, they actually kind of do need. I guess defensive line, because you have Micah Parsons.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Is they don't need to replace Micah Parsons.
Right. It really is just hey, if you have just one great pass rushing defensive lineman, you can kind of make the rest work.
Yeah. All right. Who is 25? The Green Bay Packers. They need enhancement. They need enhancement talent. They don't need anyone special.
Yeah. They're a team that actually doesn't need stars.
Yeah. And yeah, for what they don't need a tight end. They have they drafted two great ones last year or picked up them with Luke Musgrave and Kraft. Tight end, like, it's the exact opposite end of like the spectrum from like other teams where we said they don't need to draft a tight end, where it's just like you got to focus elsewhere. They just have two quality tight ends already. So why bother getting another?
Yeah, they're mostly going for, like, I'm a little worried about the Packers in terms of complacency at times, just because, like, I appreciate the Texans are going out and getting guys, getting Stefon Diggs. Like, I do worry the Packers are leaning a little too much on, like, oh, linear progression. It's like, no, sometimes guys have an off year, regress. But for me, it's offensive line. Their offensive line was a bit of a mess last year. Yeah. I think they finally got rid of their left tackle who just had chronic knee problems. So for me, it's just like, I guess, like, if Jordan Love is in the lineage of Patrick Mahomes, have the attitude of, like, you can get by without a true blue superstar at wide receiver as long as you have a good enough receiving core and a strong offensive line.
Fair.
Which is also why I say wide receiver isn't a problem.
Yeah. Honestly, their wide receiver group was pretty damn, like, it's secret sexy. All right. What number comes after 25? 26. Who the hell is 26? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I can't believe they made the fucking playoffs.
Yeah. They need luck.
I cannot believe they made that. That's so funny. Wide receiver for me, probably, just because, you know, they kept Mike Evans, but, like,
he's a fat contract,
you know, though. Yeah, which is why I'm like, you know what? You're a team that could actually afford to roll the dice on, like, one of these question mark wide receivers where it's like they have promise, but they're not surefires. Like Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, Troy Franklin, like guys who, like, if you're drafting them to be your number one wide receiver, you're going to be very upset, and they're going to be very upset because you're going to ask way too much of them. But if you're asking them to be your second or third wide receiver, especially to start while they're figuring out how to play in the NFL, everyone's going to be really happy.
Yeah. I'm going to say kicker because I haven't said kicker yet. That's really it.
Good for you.
That's the logic I'm going to use on that because I don't really have a formal opinion on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they got as far as they did out of a fluke, and it should have been the Saints to make it as far as they did.
Yeah, but isn't it nice to have the division champs hats?
Yeah.
Isn't it nice? Next up is I didn't say what they don't need.
I'm gonna say the inverse.
Quarterback because they paid too much money.
I don't think they need a wide receiver yet. Maybe in the next year or two, but not yet. All right, who is 27?
If I'm reading, well, 27's another repeat, right?
Yeah, 27 is the Arizona Cardinals from Houston. Next is the Buffalo Football Bills.
Do you want me to just do my 2-minute spiel on, like, my Lisan Al Gabe psychic paths for victory?
Sure. Hit it.
Okay. Well, they need to get wide receiver. They needed wide receiver before Stefon Diggs left because, you know, we needed an actual number 2 wide receiver. A weird amount of the problem is, like, we never replaced Cole Beasley's 80 catches. 80 to 90 catches, honestly. And it would have been great if we still had Stefon Diggs, because then we could have gotten Xavier Worthy. We could have gambled on Keon Coleman. We could have went for Adonai Mitchell, who apparently has a whole problem with diabetes that I didn't hear about before. And it just sounds like a lot. Like a lot. But now you can't because you need a number 1 guy. And too many Bills fans are very complacent about, like, well, we have Khalil Shakir. He's going to improve. And Curtis Samuel and Dalton Kincaid. And I'm like, we just did this with Gabe Davis. We just did hey, this guy will progress to the next step of evolution. And I'm like, so you're basically banking on Khalil Shakir tripling his catches, Dalton Kincaid being Travis Kelce, and Curtis Samuel being a healthy slot receiver, which he's never done before. Okay, cool. But anyway, basically, the way I see it, there are 3 options. 1, trade the farm for one of the big 3. Apparently, they really like Neighbors and Rome. And apparently there is a line where it's like, if he gets past a certain point, they will trade the farm for him. And again, I don't want to hear about, well, we traded for Sammy Watkins. Again, Sammy Watkins was very, very good, but then he got depressed because he kept getting hurt and had an alcohol addiction. If he was on this team now, he would be one of the 5 best receivers in the league. That's the simple option. That's a straightforward option. Number 2 is trade up a little bit and get Brian Thomas Jr. or Xavier Worthy, one of the speedster guys, one of the field stretchers. But then you also need to trade for Tyler Lockett or somebody. You need one person on this team who has consistently caught 80 balls before. Or third, and probably the most chaotic option, is trade your first-round pick for Brandon Ayuk and then get another wide receiver in the second round. Because again, the problem is you're not solving the problem.
Minutes.
All right, you're not solving the problem. You're just making it younger, which is objectively better, but it's not what we need. Anyway, yeah. So that's how they're going to solve the wide receiver room.
That's going to be 15
Or they'll
seconds.
draft that defensive end.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's going to be 15
or they'll draft
seconds
a defensive...
redacted off of your next 2-minute rant. Gotta keep it balanced.
All right, what do you...
I'm going to say they need a new coach.
Yeah, both them and the Eagles, it's like, if you think there's even a 40% chance you're going to fire the coach next year, why the fuck don't you just do it? And again, we'll talk about full offseason later, but it's just so fucking frustrating that we had to get rid of all these guys. We had to basically rip a core of this team out before we tried new coaches. When you have a core that's this talented, you have to at least go, maybe the coaches are the problem. And then if that doesn't work out, you go, hey guys, you know who's next?
Yeah. What do they not need?
I mean, really, the teardown should have been last year, but
yeah.
What do they not need?
I'm going to say QB. I like Josh Allen.
Again, yeah, he's a nice kid. He just wants to make dick jokes and run headfirst into people, and I can respect that.
Don't we all?
Yes. Defensive end, because again, I can't do this shit of drafting a marginal a above average defensive end instead of getting a star. They are the team that's most emblematic of, you know what you need? A fucking star. You haven't drafted a star since, Matt Milano, but he broke his leg. But other than him, Josh Allen.
All right. Next is the Detroit Lions.
They're actually a curious one.
I think they're another enhancement talent team.
Yeah.
They've got... Jared Goff looked great last season.
Mm-hmm.
Offensive line looked great. Defensive line looked great. Defensive backfield was solid.
Wide receiver core is robust, even if... I mean, they're a sneaky quarterback or receiver team for me just because Jameson Williams isn't quite panning out. And they do need to at least have an idea of what they want to do after Jared Goff. They're like Hayden Hooker. Yeah. You want to just keep Michael Penix on the bench for 2 years and then be like, all right, 2 years to win a Super Bowl. Let's go. But I'm going to say defensive end just because, again, I'm not the biggest Aiden Hutchinson guy, but I do think if you pair him with someone, it'll raise all boats. Yeah. They're, Latu is actually a guy they might want to reach for because, again, it's you don't need him to play 7 or 8 years. You need him to play 3 because that's the window to win a Super Bowl here. Yeah. Then after that, you just kind of pack it up and figure out what the next phase of this is.
I think this year will be the year, kind of like the Eagles were 2 years ago, where, or 3 years ago now, I don't know, fucking time is an illusion, where you have the 1 year where it's just oh shit, are they actually good now? And you kind of are you're looking through binoculars to see if they're actually good, and they do back it up until the last couple of weeks the following year. And I feel like that's where the Lions are now, where the eyes are on them, not as one of the worst teams, as to prevent last year from being a fluke.
Right. Which they already did one thing better than the Eagles. They kept their coordinators.
Yep.
Hey, you know those guys who created a good offense and defense? What if we make sure they don't leave?
Yeah.
At least for one more year.
And they all said the same thing of we want to stay to see this team win a Super Bowl. And
right,
I'm
so much
swearing in the background as they're saying these because that's a genius, crazy level thought process apparently.
Well, and also I have to imagine Ben Johnson looked around and said, I really want to go. Do I really fucking want to live in Carolina right now?
Yeah, and he was like, I don't
I'm
want to go.
staying.
I don't want to go
God
to these
bless all the
places.
hand wringing for like 2 weeks of like, man, this might have been their one chance. And then Ben Johnson's like, I ain't fucking leaving. And everyone's like, yeah, let's go.
Fucking go.
We're never going to die. Woo! Next up is the Baltimore
All right,
Ravens.
before that, what do we think the Lions don't need?
Whoops. Running back. Easy.
Yeah.
I also just think they have a very good system where they can make anyone work at running back. But it's nice that you have a competent older fella who's like a Frank Gore-esque figure who will just get his yard. And also, someone who could be described as, you got a fast car. We've been doing this for a bit. I'm getting loopy.
Yeah. This is going to be our longest episode. We're almost at 2 hours.
Oh, God in heaven.
Most need for the Baltimore Football Ravens.
Probably edge rusher.
Yeah, I think they need a Queen replacement. So, because Queen went to Pittsburgh, and he was pretty damn good. Every time I was tuning into a Ravens game, he was being mentioned on the defense very frequently. I think they need that.
Right.
I don't think they need to change their like QB or running back.
Yeah, honestly, it's so weird. They just have weird vibes for me. Just because it's like much like the Bills and the 49ers, they all kind of had the thought of like, this is it, this is a year, and then they just lose to the Chiefs anyway. And all of them, I guess compared to the Bills, who just had to purge most of their roster and have basically waved the white flag for this season, they kept most of their talent and actually brought in a running back who complements what they're going for well. So maybe it's a little better, but I have to imagine there is a little bit of angst of like, all right, if not last year, when? Like, are we gonna keep playing the same songs? Least needed, probably just no. They could probably use a wide receiver. Honestly, like tight end, I have to steal
Mark
your
Andrews?
play.
Yeah.
And Isaiah Likely. I love Isaiah Likely. I kind of wish he would go to a team where he gets like 70
full
targets.
reps. Yeah.
Every other game, he has some kind of stupid play where he like flips over someone or like does a 360 no scope off of like a gainer and then does some like Tony Hawk shit. I love that guy.
Yeah. 31, the San Francisco 49ers.
They need to do that bit from King of the Hill where the gang takes Cotton to John Redcorn's retreat and they just sit in a sauna bath. The stress around this team is insane. Like, that's what I mean. They have a feeling of like, you know, at some point when you're almost at the Super Bowl enough times, like you're so close and it's the same kind of like core, it just tensions rise. It's what happened to the Bills. It's like at some point the weight of not doing the thing you were supposed to do kind of breaks you. And I think that's a part of why Brandon Ayuk wants out. But yeah, I guess I would just say offensive line.
Yeah, I think
that's what you do when you're boring and just need to de-stress.
Yeah, I don't think they need any like fancy talent. I think you know
de-stress there. That's funny.
Yeah. I think they just need to be smart. Like 31 isn't exactly the most like not turnaround, but like it's solid enough trade fodder where you can maybe make something happen with like Cleveland or something.
Someone gets desperate enough that they really got to get someone before the second round starts and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, and they don't need crazy stuff. What the least they needed thing for them? I don't know. They don't really have a like. It's like the opposite end of the spectrum of like some of the like the Patriots and stuff, where it's like, oh, they need everything so much that there is no least need.
Mm-hmm.
It's they have everything so much they don't need a least needed.
My stance is probably quarterback, just because I can't imagine it helped the team that there was it was openly acknowledged that they talked about bringing Tom Brady back mid-season.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that's good for the vibes. Again, they just need to do whatever fix the vibes.
I changed my mind. I'm going to say they don't need a running back because why would you try and replace Christian McCaffrey?
Right. Yeah. Your current window is however long his body holds up, yes. Which, given that he's had 2 straight healthy years, is probably longer than we would have thought.
Yeah, I think he's not riding on borrowed time yet, but it's not going to be surprising if he gets a real nasty injury.
Right. And last up in terms of teams that actually have a first-round pick.
What the hell is this team? Kansas City Chiefs.
Are you all right? Did you hit your head?
I was so focused on making the just throwing and calling them like the Kansas City Football Chiefs that I forgot the name of the city stayed the same for the bit. So I was like, so I started like New York, and then I started to panic because I forgot where Kansas City was. So I was just like, Kansas, right. San Francisco.
They're a team with weird vibes, just because basically this whole offseason has been, hey, their owner's kind of a scumbag, isn't he?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say
trying to bully the town into building a new stadium.
Yeah, outside of him being a scumbag, I think they need a wide receiver. I think they need another weapon for Patrick Mahomes to really just.
That's gonna lead me into my hot take. Mine is offensive line, because again, it's like you've built this around just having the surest offensive line in the league. And if you can kind of just keep committing to that, the profits will continue to pay out.
Yeah.
I'm going to say their least needed is wide receiver.
Ooh.
Here's my hot take. Their wide receivers really weren't that bad last year. The 3 games that get cited for they're so bad. The Lions, which I can't defend, but that was just Kadarius Toney having a meltdown in a public space.
Yeah.
The Packers game where I'm like, I don't know, man. That deep ball Scantling dropped. I've seen plenty of guys drop that. And the Bills game where it's like, all right, you have 2 more downs to get a first down. You didn't need to win the game on a stupid play. Be adults and stop spiraling. Mm-hmm. I think one of the quiet little secrets is, actually, for all the talk about, they've won Super Bowls without Tyreek Hill, what has Tyreek Hill truly achieved on the Dolphins? Because even I know, his stats are amazing. But he pointedly always seems to fall off in the back half. He's always struggling in the playoffs. He just kept having these weird moments last year where he would just miss entire series and be getting taped up or something. I think they just identified that guy had a shelf life, and the shelf life was coming to an end sooner. And I honestly think just bringing in Hollywood Brown might just be enough, because I want to see Hollywood Brown in a sort of more stable system before I truly write that guy off.
That's fair. I'm going to say they don't need a new quarterback. They have Patrick Mahomes, and if he gets hurt, they have Carson Wentz, which I thought was an April Fool's Day joke for way too long. I discovered it wasn't a joke 2 days ago.
I have to... You never want to wish injuries on someone, but, I would kind of just like to see a whole season with Carson Wentz just to know who gets the most credit for all of this. And that leaves us with 3 teams?
3 teams that are all starting in the second round. So fortunately enough, first pick of the second round, Carolina Panthers.
Well,
we're supposed to have the original 1 pick overall, but they traded for it last year to get Bryce Young. I think they need to pull a Tank Dell situation where they ask their starting QB, who do you want?
Right. I think wide receiver is a big one. My main answer is they need to frame their current owner for a violent crime. Something egregious enough that the league has to... remember, the bar is Robert Kraft got caught in a prostitution sting, and that didn't get him kicked out. So we need to go a little higher than that. But realistically... keep it as that, but realistically, offensive line, because at this point,
they were buckling like it was no tomorrow.
Yeah, Bryce Young has shown no ability to avoid pressure at this point or handle it well, so you just have to build a line.
Yeah. They gotta build the wall. because that's what
Exactly.
the owner was doing. He built the wall to Mexico himself. What do they
Oy
least
vey.
need?
Yeah.
Fine.
Probably just quarterback because I'm like, this should be a Josh. This probably should be a Josh Rosen situation where you just get another quarterback, but you're in no position to get one. So just you kind of have to
Yeah,
eat your vegetables for
that's
this
your
until you get
most
another.
it's your most competent
Mm,
position.
right. You kind of just have to eat your vegetables until you get another. Either get to the playoffs, which means the pick was good, or you fall into the bottom five again, but actually have your pick.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next,
Um, Next up,
at 42 is the Texans. Kind of interesting.
Texans.
They had 2 first-round picks last year, and they made excellent choices.
Mhm.
Some would say rookie of the year choices. And now they have 2 second-round picks. And I think that
Mm.
is perfect opportunity for them to pick. And they were very smart this offseason too.
Mhm.
They dropped Singletary, but they picked up Joe Mixon. And
Who
they
I'd
have
argue is a little better.
he's a little better. And then they also picked up what's his face? Stephon Diggs
Mhm.
for
Who, the yeah,
like a better.
the problem with Diggs in Buffalo was just that he had lost his deep threat ability, and we already had like three like sharp route sort of slot guys, so he didn't really have a place. The Texans are all little guys who run really fast, so he fits right in.
Yeah,
He gets to do the
he's
thing they can't do.
he's got the ability to do these slants, and Tank Dell, hopefully with his leg being good again, can sprint down the field all he wants. I'm gonna say
Yes, exactly.
they should invest in an O line a little bit. Their O line isn't terrible, but just a little extra oomph.
Yeah. It is kind of a miracle they were as good as they are, considering how many different iterations of their offensive line, because they
It was
went
a
through
revolving
it
door.
injury wise. Um, you know what? Just to do a contrary one to you, I'm gonna say actually think wide receiver, just because like
Really?
again, I think you could use a little more positional versatility there, because Nico and Tank are both sort of like go guys. They're kind of like I forget what letter they use, but like the go ball guys,
Yeah.
the get deep guys. Diggs is going to be your slot for a year, but you only have him for a year, so you kind of do have to prepare post that. Um, but like, yeah, if one of the popular guys, like if a Lad McConkey or Keon Coleman falls, sort of someone like you can develop, like I think that's worth the investment because you don't need him to be great this year. You just need him to be there.
Yeah.
You need him to be good later. It's worth like a stash and resource sort of thing.
That's fair. What they don't
Um,
need, they don't need to reinvent the wheel.
that's a good one.
They had they reinvented the wheel before last season, and it worked phenomenally.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that going into this season, besides I think a harder schedule or at least possible schedule, is the fact that people are more prepared for it.
Mm.
And yeah, so they have their own division. They have the NFC North, which is a 50-50 division. They have the AFC East, which is a pretty strong division. And then they have the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Ravens, which are all possibly tough teams. So it's going to be a harder
Mm-hmm.
thing. I think they just need to work on that grind.
Mm.
They,
I guess to get like, I don't know.
I
I would say
think,
running back just because I want to see him develop a line before they do.
yeah, I think that I think if based off of what they have as their team, they can make shit happen. Like they can end up on the conference top if they fine tuned their machinery.
Mm-hmm.
And the last team to get a first overall pick is the Cleveland Browns with the 54th pick overall.
They need, honestly, what's funny is like the team is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Like they kind of invested all of their resources. They need Deshaun Watson not to suck.
Yeah.
Like all of this changes if Deshaun Watson's like literally all of this is hinged on we mortgaged our future for this man. He needs to be good.
Biggest draft
Or
trade
draft
for
a
us.
quarterback.
Yeah, I'm putting they need a quarterback, like 2. Because
yeah,
if he becomes the biggest draft trade for us, bust like ever, it'll be fantastic. It'll be hilarious.
right. It would be really funny if they draft like Michael Penix or Bo Nix. Bo Nix is basically Baker Mayfield too.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very funny if they draft Bo Nix. Watson gets hurt again, and they make the playoffs with the other guy.
And what they don't need is a running back.
Yeah, I'll say wide receiver. They actually have a surprisingly depth. Like they have a lot of depth and a lot of like positional verisimilitude. Is that the word?
Uh-uh. I'm not the word guy.
Wow,
That's it.
you really done did it. We got all of them.
And it's 2 hours exactly right now. So solid.
We did it.
Solid picks all around.
Oh yeah, I love the draft. I'm so excited we're finally getting to it.
Yep. You know what? Send us home, Carter. Let's go rest our voices to freak out tomorrow.
Oh God, I'm gonna lose my mind. And we got to record Disney Desk right before it. I'm gonna be in such a scramble, and it's an episode I'm excited for, so I gotta lock in. But ladies and gentlemen, as we reach midnight, that means we're on the clock for this NFL draft. We are merely basically 7 hours away from one of the most hyped sporting events of the year that sells you on a little card with some names on it. Hope for a brighter tomorrow. Opportunity for your team. And those dreams of a Lombardi trophy dangling in your head. Who would have thought the Houston Texans, with 2 little cards, would have changed the course of their franchise? That can be your team tomorrow. And I hope you all get a good night's sleep tonight with visions of sugar Strouds dancing in your head. Have a good night.